Billionaire invited his barren ex-wife to his engagement party to mock her, and she arrived with triplets he never saw coming. The cream-colored envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning, and Jillian Hayes' carefully rebuilt world tilted on its axis. It wasn't the expensive paper that made her hands tremble, or even the gold calligraphy spelling out her name, Ms. Jillian Hayes, never Mrs. Caldwell, not anymore. It was the return address that made her stomach drop. Warren Caldwell, East Hampton Estate. 5 years of silence, shattered by a single invitation. 5 years since he'd looked at her across their marble kitchen and delivered the words that had destroyed her. "You're broken, Jillian. I can't build a legacy with defective materials." Now, he wanted her at his engagement party, not to celebrate, to humiliate. Behind her, 3-year-old voices erupted in chaos. Harper and Sloane fighting over a stuffed elephant, while Quinn's small voice tried desperately to mediate. Her daughters. Her impossible, miraculous daughters. The ones Warren had been certain her defective body could never create. The invitation trembled between her fingers as a terrible question formed. What if he was right? What if she walked into his palace of perfection and proved, once and for all, that she was exactly what he'd said she was, struggling, overwhelmed, and utterly broken? Hello, my resilient family, and welcome to Mr. William Chronicles, where we transform pain into power and find freedom in the stories that once held us captive. If this is your first time here, become part of our tribe. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because you deserve stories that remind you of your worth. Now let me speak a blessing over your journey. May you find the courage to face those who once broke you, not for revenge, but for your own liberation. May you discover that your worth was never determined by those who couldn't see it. May you build a life so authentic that the opinions of your past become whispers you no longer strain to hear. And may you recognize that sometimes the greatest victory isn't proving them wrong. It's realizing you no longer need to. Because you were never the problem. You were always enough. And this is the story of a woman who finally believed it. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning, slipping through Jillian Hayes' mail slot like a knife wrapped in silk. She knew what it was before she even picked it up. The cream-colored paper was too thick, too expensive, the kind that whispered old money and new cruelty. Her name was written in gold calligraphy across the front, Ms. Jillian Hayes, not Mrs. Caldwell. Never that again. Her hands trembled as she turned it over. "Mommy, Harper took my elephant." Did not. Did too. The chaos of her daughters erupted behind her, but Jillian couldn't move. She stood frozen in the narrow hallway of their Brooklyn apartment, staring at the return address. Warren Caldwell, East Hampton Estate. 5 years. 5 years since he'd looked at her across their marble kitchen island and said the words that had shattered her. "You're broken, Jillian. I can't build a legacy with defective materials." "Jilly." Garrett's voice cut through the memory. His hand settled warm on her lower back, grounding her. "What is it?" She handed him the envelope without speaking. Behind them, 3-year-old Quinn had joined the fight, her small voice rising above her sister's. "Stop yelling. You're making Mommy sad." Garrett opened the invitation, his jaw tightening as he read. He invited you to his engagement party. Not a question. A statement of disbelief. Jillian finally found her voice. "He wants me to see it. His perfect life. His perfect fiancé. Everything he said I could never give him." The invitation was a masterpiece of calculated cruelty disguised as civility. Warren Caldwell and Natasha Worthington request the pleasure of your company as they celebrate their engagement. Black tie. Hampton's Estate. Saturday, June 15th. There was a handwritten note at the bottom in Warren's precise script. "I heard through mutual friends that you're doing well. I thought you might enjoy an evening among old friends." "Old friends," Jillian whispered, bitter laughter catching in her throat. "He doesn't have friends. He has assets." Mommy's crying. Harper's voice went sharp with worry. Garrett turned, scooping up all 3 girls in one smooth motion that made them shriek with surprised laughter. "No crying in this house. We're the Hayes Monroe headquarters of awesome, remember." "I'm not crying," Jillian lied, swiping at her eyes. Quinn wriggled free, and wrapped her small arms around Jillian's legs. Don't be sad. God, her daughters. Her impossible, miraculous daughters. Warren had been so certain her body was the problem. 2 years of fertility treatments, each failure driving another wedge between them. The doctors couldn't find anything definitively wrong, but Warren had decided. She was defective, broken, unable to give him the heirs his empire demanded. He'd served her divorce papers while she was still recovering from her final procedure. Left her hollowed out and convinced he was right. Until Garrett. She watched him now, effortlessly braiding Harper's wild curls while Sloane climbed onto his shoulders. A trauma surgeon with a soldier's steady hands and a poet's patient heart. He'd found her at a medical conference 2 years after her divorce, drunk and breaking down at a hotel bar. "I'm damaged goods," she told him that night. He'd pulled her close, his breath warm against her ear. "Then I guess we match. Because I'm pretty sure I've been broken since Afghanistan." But he wasn't broken. He was just honest about his scars. 3 months later, she'd conceived. Naturally, without treatments or interventions or the crushing pressure of Warren's expectations. Triplets. The doctor's words still made her laugh. "Well, Mrs. Hayes, I'd say your body is working just fine. You're going to accept." Garrett's voice brought her back to the present. He'd gotten the girls settled with coloring books and returned to the kitchen where she still stood, invitation in hand. "I want him to see," Jillian admitted, her voice raw with something between rage and grief. "I want Warren to understand what he threw away." Garrett studied her face, reading the war happening behind her eyes. "This isn't about proving something to him, is it?" "No." She met his gaze. "It's about proving something to myself. That he was wrong. That I was never the problem. You already know that. Up here, yes." She tapped her temple. "But there's still a part of me, Garrett, a part one hate, that hears his voice. That feels like maybe I am exactly what he said I was." So we go to the Hamptons. Garrett pulled her close, his arms solid around her. We walk into his palace, and we show him exactly who Jillian Hayes became after he was stupid enough to let her go. She breathed him in, sandalwood and certainty. "The girls too?" she asked. "Especially the girls." His smile was dangerous. Let him see his defective materials created 3 perfect human beings. Jillian looked at Harper, Sloane, and Quinn, their dark heads bent over coloring books, and felt something fierce ignite in her chest. Warren Caldwell had built an empire on appearances, on control, on the illusion of perfection. She was about to shatter every assumption he'd ever made about her. Have you ever gotten a message from someone who hurt you and felt your stomach drop? Drop a comment and tell me what you did, because Jillian's about to walk into the lion's den with 3 kids and a whole lot of unfinished business. If you're ready to see a woman reclaim her power, hit that like button and subscribe to Mr. William Chronicles, because this story is just getting started. "We're going," Jillian said, her voice steady now. And Warren Caldwell is about to learn the most expensive lesson of his life. Behind her, Quinn looked up from her coloring. "Are we going to a party?" "Yes, baby." "Will there be cake?" Garrett laughed, the sound warm and real. "Definitely cake." What he didn't say, what hung in the air between him and Jillian, was that Warren was about to eat every cruel word he'd ever spoken. And Jillian was going to make sure he choked on them. Jillian stood before her closet 3 days later, staring at dresses she hadn't worn in years. Behind each one lived a memory she tried to bury. The emerald silk? Warren had bought it for her, called it an investment in his image. The black cocktail dress? She'd worn it to their last anniversary dinner, where he checked his phone 17 times and left her sitting alone for dessert. "None of these," she muttered, shoving hangers aside. Garrett appeared in the doorway, coffee in hand. "You're spiraling. I'm preparing. You're time-traveling." He set the coffee on her nightstand. And not to anywhere good. He was right. The past 3 days had been a descent into memory, each one pulling her deeper into the woman she used to be. 7 years ago, the Plaza Hotel, New York's annual charity gala. Jillian had been 26, working for a small marketing firm, attending only because her boss had the flu and someone needed to represent the company. Warren Caldwell had found her at the champagne fountain. "You look lost," he'd said, his smile calculated to disarm. "I look underdressed," she corrected, glancing at the sea of designer gowns. "You look real." His eyes had traveled over her like an appraisal. "That's rare in rooms like this." She should have heard the warning in those words. Rare, valuable, collectible. But at 26, with student loans and a studio apartment in Queens, she'd only heard noticed. Warren Caldwell, heir to a real estate empire, Forbes 30 under 30, impossibly handsome in the way of men who'd never questioned their place in the world, wanted her. Their courtship had been a whirlwind. Private jets to Paris, front row Fashion Week tickets, dinners where the wine cost more than her monthly rent. He'd made her feel like Cinderella, never mentioning that he saw her as a project to be perfected. The proposal came 6 months later. A ring that could have fed a family for a year. Photographers mysteriously present. His hand possessive on her waist as he whispered, "Say yes, Jillian. Let me make you into everything you could be." She'd thought he meant happy. He'd meant acceptable. 5 years ago, the first fertility appointment had been her idea. They'd been trying for a year, and Warren's patience was thinning like his hairline. "We should see a specialist," she'd suggested over breakfast in their Tribeca penthouse. Warren hadn't looked up from his Wall Street journal. "Fine. Handle it. Handle it." As if her body was a business transaction going poorly. The appointments became routine. Blood draws, ultrasounds, medications that made her bloated and emotional. Warren attended exactly 3 sessions, each time checking his phone throughout, his leg bouncing with barely contained irritation. "Mr. Caldwell," the doctor had said during their 4th month of trying, "the tests show no definitive issues. Sometimes stress can." "So you're saying it's psychological?" Warren had interrupted, his voice sharp. "I'm saying fertility is complex. I'm healthy. My sperm count is excellent. So if there's no physical problem with her, then the issue is mental." "Correct." Jillian had sat there, silent, as he'd reduced her body to a malfunctioning machine. The doctor had tried again. "Mr. and Mrs. Caldwell, many couples face. Many couples don't have my resources." Warren had stood abruptly. "Clearly, we need better doctors." They'd tried 4 more specialists. Each appointment, Warren grew colder. Started making comments about investment and return and cutting losses. The final procedure had been hell. Aggressive hormones. Painful injections. Jillian's body pushed to its breaking point while Warren complained about the cost. When that failed too, he'd served her divorce papers. Not in person. Through his lawyer. While she was still bleeding, still broken, still hoping he might choose her over his empire. His only personal message had been a text. "You're not who I thought you were. I need a woman who can give me heirs, not excuses." "Jilly." Garrett's hand on her shoulder pulled her back to the present. "You're doing it again." She realized she was crying, mascara probably ruined, standing half-dressed in their bedroom while their daughters played in the living room. "I was remembering," she whispered. "I know." He turned her to face him, thumbs brushing away tears. "But you're not her anymore. You're not the woman he tried to break." "Aren't I? Look at me. I can't even pick a dress without falling apart. You're allowed to feel this." Garrett's voice was fierce. "He didn't just leave you, Jillian. He blamed you for his failures. He made you believe you were defective when the only broken thing in that marriage was him." She wanted to believe that. Some days she did. Other days she heard Warren's voice. Defective materials. 3 years ago. The medical conference in Boston had been her boss's idea. "Get out of the city," Sharon had urged. "You've been a ghost since the divorce." Jillian had gone reluctantly, attending panels she barely listened to, networking with people whose names she forgot immediately. Until the hotel bar. Until too much wine and a breakdown she couldn't control. "I'm broken," she told the bartender through tears. "Medically, actually, genuinely broken." "No, you're not." The voice had come from beside her. A man with silver-threaded temples, tired eyes, and broad shoulders that suggested he carried weight beyond the physical. "You don't know that," she'd argued. "I'm a trauma surgeon." He gestured to his conference badge. Dr. Garrett Monroe. And I know broken when I see it. You're not broken. You're grieving. Something about his certainty had cracked her open. They talked until 2 a.m. About his tours in Afghanistan. About the soldiers he couldn't save. About her marriage that had died slowly, painfully, with her convinced she was the cause. He told you that you were defective? Garrett had asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Not in those words. What words? She told him everything. Every cruel comment. Every cold dismissal. Every time Warren had treated her body like a failing investment. Garrett had listened without interrupting, his jaw progressively tightening. When she finished, he'd said, I've seen actual broken things, Jillian. Shattered bones. Traumatic injuries. Bodies pushed past their limits. You know what they all have in common. What? They can heal. He'd leaned closer, his voice dropping. You're not broken. You've just been with someone who didn't know how to see you. They'd kissed then. Soft at first, tentative, like two damaged people afraid to want something good. His hotel room had been a revelation. Warren had treated intimacy like a transaction, efficient, goal-oriented, another box to check. But Garrett touched her like she was something precious he'd thought he'd lost. He'd traced the stretch marks on her stomach from hormone treatments, kissed the injection sites on her thighs, whispered against her skin that every part of her was exactly as it should be. You're perfect, he breathed as he moved inside her. I'm not. You are to me. 3 months later, she'd taken a pregnancy test on a whim. Positive. She'd taken 4 more, certain it was an error. All positive. The ultrasound had shown 3 heartbeats. 3 tiny, impossible miracles. Triplets, the doctor had said, smiling. Congratulations, Ms. Hayes. Your body is working just fine. Jillian had called Garrett from the parking lot, sobbing so hard she could barely speak. He'd arrived in 20 minutes, still in scrubs from surgery, and held her while she shook. We're having babies, she'd whispered against his chest. We're having babies, he confirmed, his voice thick with wonder. Warren had called her defective. Her body had called her mother. Present day. Wear the red dress, Garrett said now, pulling her from memory. The one you bought last month. It's not fancy enough for. It's you. He kissed her forehead. Not who Warren wanted you to be. Not who you think you should be. Just you. And that's enough. Listen, if you've made it this far into Jillian's story, you're clearly invested. Do me a solid. Hit that like button right now. Drop a comment telling me if you've ever had to face someone from your past. And subscribe to Mr. William Chronicles, because this story is about to get intense. Jillian looked at herself in the mirror. She saw the years in her eyes. The exhaustion. The stretch marks hidden beneath her clothes. The evidence of a life lived fully, messily, honestly. Warren would see imperfection. She needed to see strength. Okay, she said finally. Red dress. Saturday. We faced the ghost. From a living room, Harper's voice rang out. Mommy, when do we get to wear our fancy dresses? Garrett squeezed her hand. Our girls are going to steal the show. That's what I'm afraid of, Jillian admitted. Don't be. His smile was dangerous. Let them see what your defective body created. Let Warren choke on his assumptions. Jillian took a breath, feeling something shift inside her chest. Warren had written her off. She was about to rewrite the entire story. Saturday arrived wrapped in humidity and Jillian's mounting dread. I can't do this. She stood in their bedroom, the red dress clinging to curves that 3 pregnancies had reshaped. In the mirror, she saw a woman trying to convince herself she was ready for war. You can. Garrett appeared behind her, fastening his cufflinks. He looked devastating in his tailored suit, broad shoulders, confident stance, everything Warren had never been. And you will. From the hallway came chaos incarnate. Harper, that's my bow. You weren't using it. Girls. Jillian called, her voice sharper than intended. We leave in 10 minutes. If you're not ready, we're not going. Empty threat. They both knew it. Quinn appeared in the doorway, her white dress already smudged with something purple. Mommy, do I look pretty? Jillian's heart cracked open. You look perfect, baby. Then why are you crying? Happy tears, Jillian lied, kneeling to wipe the mysterious purple substance from Quinn's hem. Sometimes grown-ups cry when they're happy. Quinn's small hand touched Jillian's cheek with devastating gentleness. It's okay to be scared, too. 3 years old and already wiser than Jillian felt. The drive to the Hamptons took 2 hours that felt like 2 minutes, and 2 years simultaneously. Harper dominated the conversation, narrating every car, billboard, and cloud formation. Sloane had her headphones on, lost in whatever music made sense to her sensory-sensitive brain. Quinn sat quietly, watching Jillian in the rearview mirror with those 2 knowing eyes. "Remember what we talked about," Garrett said softly, his hand finding Jillian's knee. "We're not here to prove anything to Warren. We're here so you can close this chapter on your terms." "What if I can't?" The question escaped before she could stop it. "What if I walk in there and I'm still just her? The woman he threw away? Then I'll remind you who you actually are." His thumb traced circles on her knee, grounding her. The woman who rebuilt herself, who built a career, who's raising 3 incredible daughters, who survived him and came out stronger. What if the girls? The girls will be fine. Kids are resilient. And they have us. Jillian wanted to believe him. The estate appeared through the trees, like something from a nightmare disguised as a dream. Sprawling lawns. A circular driveway lined with luxury cars. The house itself was a monument to excess. White columns, massive windows, the kind of architectural peacocking that screamed, "Look at what I own." "Holy shit," Garrett muttered. "Language," Jillian said automatically. "Mommy, this house is huge." Harper pressed her face against the window. "Do castles live here?" "Just people with too much money," Garrett replied. Jillian's hands were shaking. "I think I'm going to be sick." "Breathe." Garrett parked among the Teslas and Mercedes. "In through your nose. Out through your mouth. You've got this." She didn't feel like she had this. A valet approached. Garrett handed over the keys to their practical Honda CR-V, the most pedestrian vehicle in a sea of status symbols. "Ready?" Garrett asked, opening her door. "No, absolutely not." "Yes," Jillian lied. They extracted the girls from the back seat. Harper immediately tried to run toward the house. Sloane clung to Jillian's hand, overwhelmed by the noise and crowd. Quinn stood perfectly still, taking everything in with quiet assessment. "Stay close," Jillian instructed. "Hold hands. No running." "But Mommy." "Harper, I mean it." They walked toward the entrance as a unit. Jillian felt every eye track their approach. Whispers started like wildfire. "That's her. The ex-wife. She brought children? How tacky. Warren must be mortified." The massive front doors opened before they reached them. A server in formal attire gestured them inside. And there it was. Warren's world. Crystal chandeliers that cost more than Jillian made in a year. Marble floors so polished you could see your reflection. Art that belonged in museums. People dressed in designer labels, holding champagne glasses like weapons, their smiles sharp enough to cut. "Mommy, everyone's staring," Quinn whispered. "Let them stare," Garrett said firmly, his hand protective on Jillian's lower back. "We belong here just as much as anyone." Jillian wasn't sure that was true. The crowd parted. And there, positioned at the base of a grand staircase like he'd choreographed the moment, stood Warren Caldwell. He'd aged. Not badly, but noticeably. Silver threading through his dark hair. Lines around his eyes that hadn't been there 5 years ago. He was still handsome in that practiced, calculated way of men who spent money maintaining their appearance. But when he saw them, his face went through a transformation that Jillian felt in her bones. Shock, confusion, something that might have been longing. Then anger, cold and familiar. His eyes dropped to the triplets. Time seemed to slow. Warren darling. A woman materialized beside him, all blonde hair and sharp cheekbones. Natasha Worthington. Old money personified. She wore her engagement ring like a weapon. "You didn't mention your ex-wife had children." The pause before children was weighted with judgment. Warren's mouth opened, closed. No sound emerged. "3," Jillian said, her voice steadier than she felt. I have 3 daughters. How unexpected. Natasha's smile didn't reach her eyes. Warren mentioned you'd had difficulties. The room had gone silent. Everyone watching the collision. Things change, Jillian replied simply. An older man approached, 60s, distinguished, with Warren's nose and eyes, but something warmer in his expression. George Caldwell, Warren's father. Jillian had only met him twice during her marriage. He'd spent most of it overseas managing international properties. Jillian. George's handshake was firm, genuine. It's good to see you. Mr. Caldwell. Please, George. His eyes dropped to the triplets, and something unexpected softened in his face. And who are these beautiful young ladies? This is Harper, Sloan, and Quinn, Jillian introduced, her hand protectively on Quinn's shoulder. Triplets. George's surprise seemed genuine. My goodness. Yes. Jillian met his eyes, then deliberately shifted her gaze to Warren. Surprise. Warren finally found his voice. How is this possible? The usual way, Garrett interjected smoothly, extending his hand. Garrett Monroe, Jillian's partner and the girl's father. The word father hit Warren like a physical blow. Natasha's grip on Warren's arm tightened, her knuckles going white. Well, this is quite the reunion. Why don't we all get drinks? I want juice, Harper announced loudly. Several guests tittered. Natasha's smile turned brittle. Of course, sweetheart. A server appeared as if summoned. We have apple orange. Both, Harper declared. Harper inside voice, Jillian corrected, feeling her control slipping. This was already going wrong. Warren was staring at the girls like they were ghosts. Triplets, he repeated. You had triplets. Naturally? The question hung in the air, heavy with accusation and disbelief. Naturally, Jillian confirmed, her voice ice. Turns out my body works just fine when it's not under constant stress and criticism. George's eyebrows rose. Several guests suddenly found their champagne very interesting. Natasha's composure cracked. Warren, perhaps we should. But Quinn chose that moment to demonstrate her 3-year-old unpredictability. She darted forward, stumbled, and crashed directly into a pedestal holding what was clearly an expensive sculpture. Everything happened in slow motion. The sculpture tipped. Jillian lunged. Too late. Crystal shattered across marble with a sound like breaking dreams. The silence that followed was deafening. Quinn's face crumpled. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's okay, baby, Jillian started, but Natasha's voice cut through. That was a baccarat crystal. $12,000. I'll pay for it, Jillian said automatically, her stomach dropping. $12,000 she absolutely didn't have. Don't be ridiculous, George said firmly, waving a server over. It's a party. Accidents happen, especially with little ones around. He crouched down to Quinn's level. It's all right, sweetheart. Just crystal. You're much more valuable than crystal. Quinn sniffled, nodding. But the damage was done. Jillian could feel the judgment radiating from every guest. See the vindication in Natasha's eyes. The confirmation of every assumption. She shouldn't have brought children. How inappropriate. Those poor girls, raised by a woman who clearly can't handle them. Warren finally spoke, his voice low and tight with something dangerous. Jillian, we need to talk. Privately. I don't think, Garrett began. Now. Warren's eyes were chips of ice. If you're still watching, you're clearly hooked on this drama. Show this video some love. Hit that like button, subscribe to Mr. William Chronicles, and drop a comment telling me, Team Jillian or Team Warren? Because what happens next is going to blow your mind. Garrett stepped closer, protective. Whatever you need to say to Jillian, you can say in front of me. Warren ignored him entirely, his gaze boring into Jillian. How dare you bring them here? How is this even possible? The doctors said. The doctors said there was no definitive problem, Jillian interrupted, her voice shaking with rage. You decided I was defective. You decided I was broken. But I wasn't the problem, Warren. She stepped closer, months of therapy and rage and grief channeling into this moment. You were. The words landed like a slap. Warren's face flushed red. Natasha's mouth fell open. George looked between them with dawning understanding. And Jillian realized something terrifying. She just declared war at his engagement party. There was no going back now. The dining room was a masterpiece of calculated seating arrangements. Jillian found herself positioned between Warren's Aunt Miriam, a woman whose pearls cost more than Jillian's car, and a hedge fund manager named Preston who kept looking at her like she was a fascinating specimen under glass. Garrett sat directly across from her, the triplets arranged between them like a buffer zone. At least she could see him, draw strength from the steady way he met her eyes. Warren and Natasha presided at the head of the table, the perfect couple playing their parts. But Jillian could see the cracks. The way Natasha's smile never quite reached her eyes. How Warren's hand shook slightly as he reached for his wine glass. Again, he was already on his third glass, and dinner hadn't even been served. So, Aunt Miriam began, her voice dripping with false sweetness. 3 children. That must be exhausting. It has its moments, Jillian replied carefully. I can't imagine managing alone. Miriam dabbed her lips with a napkin. Children need structure, stability, a proper family unit. They have a family unit, Garrett interjected smoothly. They have 2 parents who love them. Of course, of course. Miriam's smile was a scalpel. Though marriage does provide a certain legitimacy, don't you think? Jillian felt her face flush. They weren't married, not because they didn't want to be, but because Jillian still carried scars from her first marriage. Garrett understood. He'd never pushed. But Miriam had found the soft spot and pressed. Mommy, which fork? Harper whispered, staring at the elaborate place setting with confusion. Start from the outside, baby. Jillian reached over to guide her hand, aware of every judgmental eye tracking the interaction. Perfect mothers probably didn't have to explain which fork at fancy dinners. Perfect mothers probably had children who already knew. The first course arrived, some microgreen salad that cost more than it weighed. Sloane took one look and pushed her plate away. It's yucky. Sloane, just try it, Jillian urged quietly. But I don't like it. You haven't tasted it. I can smell it. It smells green. Several guests chuckled. Not kindly. Across the table, Garrett was helping Quinn cut her food, his movements patient and practiced. He caught Jillian's eye and mouth breathe. She tried. Tell me, Preston, the hedge fund manager, leaned in, his cologne overwhelming. How did you and Warren know each other? He's been quite mysterious about his first marriage. First marriage. Like she was a failed prototype. We were married for 3 years, Jillian said flatly. And then we weren't. How diplomatic. Preston's smile was oily. And the children came after? Yes. How fortunate that your situation resolved itself. His eyes traveled over her in a way that made her skin crawl. Though raising 3 children without a father figure must present challenges. They have a father. Jillian's voice went sharp. I meant their biological. I meant me, Garrett interrupted, his tone deadly calm. I'm their father. Biology is just genetics. Fatherhood is showing up every day. Preston held up his hands. No offense intended, but offense had been delivered. The main course arrived, some deconstructed beef situation that Harper immediately knocked over trying to reach for her water glass. Red wine reduction bled across the white tablecloth. I'm sorry. Harper's eyes filled with tears. It's okay, baby. Accidents happen. Jillian grabbed her napkin, trying to contain the damage. A server appeared instantly, whisking away the soiled linens with professional efficiency. But the damage to Jillian's composure was already done. She could feel herself fracturing. Every mistake her daughters made felt like confirmation of Warren's assessment. She was struggling. She was overwhelmed. She was exactly what he'd said she was. This must be so difficult for you, Aunt Miriam observed, her voice pitched to carry. Managing 3 small children in public. Some people simply aren't cut out for motherhood under challenging circumstances. Jillian's vision blurred. Excuse me. She stood abruptly, nearly knocking over her chair. Jilly, Garrett started. I just need a moment. She fled the dining room, her heels clicking too loudly on marble floors. Found a bathroom down a hallway lined with family portraits. Warren through the years, golden and perfect, never struggling, never failing. Inside, she locked the door and let herself break. Silent tears that she couldn't control. Her carefully applied makeup running. The red dress suddenly felt too tight, too bold, too much evidence of a woman trying to be something she wasn't. Warren had been right. She couldn't do this. She was failing right in front of everyone. A knock at the door made her freeze. Jillian. George's voice. "May I come in?" She considered pretending she wasn't there. But something in his tone, genuine concern rather than judgment, made her unlock the door. George Caldwell stepped inside, closing the door behind him. Up close, she could see the weight he carried. The lines around his eyes spoke of regrets rather than laughter. "I'm fine," Jillian lied, wiping uselessly at her mascara. "You're not." George leaned against the counter. "And you don't have to be. That room is full of sharks disguised as society people. They'd eat their own young if it served them." Despite everything, Jillian almost smiled. "You're one of them." "I made them," George corrected, his voice heavy. "My mistake. I raised Warren to value appearance over substance, success over compassion, the bottom line over the human cost." He paused. "I taught him that people, especially women, were assets to be acquired or liabilities to be discarded." Jillian stared at him. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because watching you in that dining room, watching your daughters, I saw something I haven't seen in years." George's eyes were distant. "Love. Messy, imperfect, exhausting love. Your girls are overstimulated and acting out because they're 3-year-olds in an adult environment. That's not failure. That's biology. Tell that to your family." "My family wouldn't recognize authentic emotion if it slapped them." George moved toward the door, then paused. "My son learned the wrong lessons from me, Jillian. But those girls of yours? They're loved. That's what matters. That's the only thing that matters." After he left, Jillian stared at herself in the mirror, saw the smeared makeup, the exhaustion, the evidence of a woman barely holding it together. But maybe George was right. Maybe barely holding it together while loving fiercely was more authentic than Warren's performed perfection. She cleaned her face, fixed what she could, and returned to the dining room, where everything was going catastrophically wrong. Warren was standing, his face flushed with alcohol and something darker. Natasha's hand was on his arm, trying to pull him down, but he shook her off. "A toast," Warren announced, his voice too loud, his words slightly slurred. "To second chances." The room went silent. Garrett was already standing, positioning himself between the triplets and Warren. His body language screamed threat assessment. "Warren, darling, perhaps we should," Natasha tried. "To second chances," Warren continued, his eyes finding Jillian as she stood frozen in the doorway. "To the roads not taken. To the families we could have built if—" He stopped, his composure cracking. "If everything hadn't gone so wrong." "Sit down," George commanded from his seat. "No." Warren's laugh was bitter. "Everyone wants to celebrate my engagement, my new life, my fresh start. But nobody wants to talk about what I gave up, what I lost." "You didn't lose anything." Natasha's voice went cold as winter. "You made choices. I made mistakes." Warren was looking at Jillian now, only Jillian. "I made the biggest mistake of my life." The room erupted in whispers. Natasha stood abruptly, her chair scraping against marble. Her face had gone white with humiliation. "Warren, stop," George warned. But Warren was past stopping. "Those children should have been mine. That family should have been mine. If I'd just been patient. If I'd just believed." "Mommy, why is the angry man yelling?" Quinn's small voice cut through everything. And just like that, Jillian's maternal instinct overrode every other emotion. "We're leaving," she announced, gathering Quinn into her arms. "Girls, we're going home." "Thank God," Garrett muttered, already collecting Harper and Sloane. "Jillian, wait." Warren started toward them. George intercepted him physically. "Let them go, son." "But you've done enough damage. You've watched this far, which means you're invested in how this story ends. Show some love, smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and comment below. Was Jillian right to leave, or should she have stayed? Your thoughts matter to me. They walked out of that mansion with whatever dignity remained. The valet brought their car. Garrett loaded the exhausted, confused triplets into their car seats, while Jillian stood in the humid night air, shaking. "Hey." Garrett pulled her close once the girls were secured. "You okay?" "He won," Jillian whispered. "I came here to prove something, and instead I proved I'm exactly what he said. Struggling, overwhelmed, unable to handle my own life. That's not what happened in there. Isn't it?" The girls melted down. "I cried in the bathroom. Warren made a scene, and everyone saw exactly what a disaster I am." Garrett's hands framed her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. "What I saw was a woman managing 3 toddlers in a hostile environment while maintaining her composure. I saw you protecting your daughters. I saw you choosing us over ego. That's not weakness, Jillian. That's strength. It doesn't feel like strength. It never does when you're in it." The drive home was silent except for the girls' sleepy murmurs. Jillian stared out the window, watching the Hamptons fade behind them, feeling like she'd lost a war she didn't even know she was fighting. Warren had won after all, by simply making her doubt herself again. Back home, after the girls were in bed, Jillian sat on their couch and let herself fully break down. Garrett held her while she sobbed, not pretty tears, but ugly, gasping cries that shook her entire body. "I wanted him to see that I was okay," she choked out. "That I didn't need him. That I built something beautiful without him. Instead, he saw exactly what he said I was. A mess." "He saw what he wanted to see," Garrett corrected. "But Jillian, everyone else saw something different. George saw it. I saw it. Even Natasha saw it. That's why she looked so threatened." "Threatened? By what?" "My inability to control my own children." "By your authenticity." Garrett's voice was firm. "By the fact that you have something real while she has something performed. Warren ruined his own engagement party, not you. He couldn't stop thinking about what he threw away." Jillian wanted to believe him, but all she could feel was the weight of failure pressing down on her chest. Warren had invited her to witness his triumph. Instead, she'd given him exactly what he wanted. Confirmation that leaving her had been right all along. Jillian didn't leave her apartment for 3 days. She called in sick to work, something she never did. Let the girls watch more television than any parenting book recommended. Stayed in pajamas past noon while Garrett covered her shifts with the triplets, his concern evident in every careful glance. "You need to talk to someone," he said on day 3. Finding her still in bed at 10 a.m. while he got ready for a hospital shift. "I'm talking to you. I mean your therapist. Jillian, you're spiraling. I'm processing. You're hiding." He sat on the edge of the bed. "And I get it. That party was brutal. But you can't let Warren win by staying in this hole. He already won." Jillian pulled the covers higher. "I proved him right. I'm exactly what he said I was." Garrett opened his mouth to argue, but his pager went off. Emergency surgery. He kissed her forehead, frustrated and late. "We're not done with this conversation." After he left, Jillian stared at the ceiling, listening to the girls play in the living room. Their laughter felt like an accusation. She was supposed to be stronger than this, better than this. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. "Jillian Hayes?" A man's voice. Formal. Unfamiliar. "Who is this?" "This is George Caldwell. I hope you don't mind. I got your number from the invitation RSVP list." Jillian sat up, suddenly alert. "Mr. Caldwell." "George, please." He sounded tired. "I'm calling because Warren's engagement is over. Natasha left him yesterday, took her ring and her dignity, and walked out of his life." The words should have felt like victory. Instead, Jillian felt only exhaustion. "I'm sorry to hear that." "Don't be. It was inevitable." George paused. "But Jillian, I'm calling to warn you. Warren is not handling this well. He's been drinking, making calls, showing up at my office asking about you." Jillian's stomach dropped. "What does he want?" "Honestly, I think he wants absolution. Permission to feel like his choices were understandable. George's voice hardened. But that's not your responsibility. I wanted you to know in case he tries to contact you. Thank you for the warning. And Jillian? Those daughters of yours are beautiful. You're doing something right. After hanging up, Jillian felt a familiar dread settling deeper into her bones. Warren wasn't done with her yet. The first call came that afternoon. Blocked number. She let it go to voicemail. Warren's voice slurred and desperate. Jillian, please. I just need to talk to you. 5 minutes. I need to understand how. The message cut off. The second call came an hour later. Then a third. Then text from numbers she didn't recognize. Those girls should have been mine. We could have had that family. Why did you give up on us? He's rewriting history, Jillian told her therapist during an emergency video session that evening, making himself the victim of my failure instead of the architect of our divorce. How does that make you feel? Dr. Chen asked. Angry, guilty, exhausted, all of it at once. Jillian rubbed her temples. Part of me wants to respond, to make him understand that he destroyed us, not me. But another part just wants him to disappear. The part that wants to respond, what does it hope to accomplish? Jillian thought about it. Vindication, I guess. I want him to admit he was wrong. And if he never does? The question hung heavy. Then I stay stuck here, waiting for permission to move on that he'll never give. Exactly. Dr. Chen leaned forward. Jillian, you don't need Warren's admission of guilt to be free of him. You just need to stop giving him power over your narrative. Easier said than done. Day 5 brought Warren to her workplace. Jillian was in a meeting with a client when her assistant knocked urgently. There's a man here demanding to see you. Security is involved. Her stomach dropped. She excused herself, heart pounding. Warren stood in her building's lobby, disheveled in a way she'd never seen. His suit was wrinkled, his hair uncombed. Dark circles under his eyes suggested he hadn't slept in days. 2 security guards flanked him, hands ready but not touching. Jillian. Relief flooded his face when he saw her. Thank God. They wouldn't let me up. Warren, what are you doing here? I needed to see you. He took a step forward. The guards tensed. I need to understand. Those girls, they should have been ours. We should have been a family. They were never yours, Jillian said, her voice shaking. They were never a possibility with you. But if I'd been more patient. It wasn't about patience. Her voice rose, echoing in the marble lobby. People were staring. She didn't care. It was about respect, about support, about treating me like a partner instead of a failing investment. You threw me away when I didn't perform up to your standards. I made a mistake. Warren's voice cracked. I see that now. Everything's falling apart, Jillian. Natasha's gone. My father barely speaks to me. The business is struggling. And I keep thinking about those girls. About what we could have built if I hadn't been so. So what? Jillian interrupted. So cruel? So selfish? So convinced that I was the problem? Yes. The admission seemed to cost him. All of it. I was wrong about everything. The word she'd wanted to hear for 5 years. But standing there, watching him fall apart, Jillian felt only emptiness. Your realization doesn't fix anything, she said quietly. It doesn't undo the damage. It doesn't give me back the years I spent believing I was broken. I know. But Jillian, please. Just let me. He reached for her. Don't touch me. She stepped back. Warren, you need to leave. Get help. Talk to a therapist. But stop trying to use me to feel better about your choices. Just let me see them, he begged, his voice desperate. The girls. Let me see what I lost. No. The word came out hard as stone. They're not your closure. They're my daughters. And you don't get to meet them just to make yourself feel something. Security moved in as Warren's face crumpled. They escorted him out gently but firmly while he called her name, his voice breaking. Jillian stood in that lobby, shaking, aware of every eye on her. Her phone buzzed. Garrett. Everything okay? George just called me. She typed back. Warren showed up at my office. Security removed him. Coming to get you. You're in surgery. Not anymore. 20 minutes. That night, after the girls were asleep, Warren appeared at their apartment. Jillian heard the pounding first. Opened the door to find him swaying in the hallway, clearly intoxicated, eyes red-rimmed and desperate. "Please," he slurred. "I just need to see them. To understand what could have been mine. You need to leave." Jillian kept the door mostly closed, her body blocking entry. "Right now." "They should know me," Warren insisted, his voice rising. "Those girls, they should know their real father." "Garrett is their real father," Jillian said, ice in her voice. "You're nothing to them. You're nothing to me. I made the biggest mistake of my life." Warren was crying now, shoulder against her doorframe. "I can't live with that. I don't know how to live with that." Garrett appeared behind Jillian, phone in hand. "Warren, leave now or I'm calling the police. You don't understand." "I understand perfectly." Garrett's voice was dangerous calm. "You destroyed something beautiful because you couldn't handle imperfection. Now you're trying to force your way back in because you're finally realizing what you lost. But Jillian doesn't owe you healing. She doesn't owe you closure. She doesn't owe you anything." "5 minutes," Warren begged. "Please." "No." Jillian's voice was final. "Garrett, call them." While Garrett dialed 911, Jillian looked at her ex-husband, this man who'd once held her entire heart, and felt nothing but exhaustion. "Your recovery cannot involve me," she said quietly. "Figure out how to live with your choices without making them my burden to carry." The police arrived within minutes. Warren left without resistance, deflated and broken. After they were gone, Jillian locked every door, checked on her sleeping daughters, and finally allowed herself to fall apart. Not from fear, not from guilt, from the sheer exhaustion of being someone else's solution to problems she didn't create. "I can't keep doing this," she told Garrett, curled into his arms on their couch. "He won't let me move on." Then we forced the issue. Garrett's jaw was set. Restraining order. No contact. Whatever it takes. "What if something happens to him? What if he—" She couldn't finish the sentence. "That's not on you," Garrett said firmly. "His mental health is not your responsibility. You are not required to set yourself on fire to keep him warm." Jillian closed her eyes, trying to believe him. But Warren's words echoed, "I don't know how to live with this." And Jillian couldn't shake the terrible feeling that his unraveling was somehow still her fault. Spring arrived 6 months later, and Jillian barely recognized herself in the mirror. Not because she'd changed physically. The exhaustion lines were still there, the evidence of sleepless nights with 3 toddlers etched into her features. But something fundamental had shifted. The weight she'd carried for years, the crushing burden of Warren's opinion, had finally lifted. She stood in her kitchen, their kitchen, hers and Garrett's and the girls', watching through the window as Garrett taught the triplets to plant tomatoes in their small backyard garden. Harper was covered in dirt, naturally. Sloane was arranging seeds by color despite Garrett's patient explanation that it didn't work that way. Quinn sat quietly, studying a worm with scientific fascination. "Mommy, look," Harper called, holding up a fistful of soil. "I'm helping." "You're doing great, baby," Jillian called back. George Caldwell appeared beside her at the window, coffee mug in hand. He'd become a fixture in their lives, Grandpa George to the girls, a gentle presence that asked for nothing and gave everything. "They're growing fast," George observed. "Too fast." Jillian smiled. "Quinn starts pre-K in the fall." "I'm not ready." "Parents never are." George was quiet for a moment. "I got a letter from Warren yesterday." Jillian's stomach tightened reflexively, though not as sharply as it once would have. "How is he?" "Sober. Working. Living in Oregon, running a small consulting firm." George's voice was carefully neutral. "He's in therapy. Intensive. He asked me to give you something." He pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket. Jillian stared at it like it might bite. "I don't want." "I know." George set it on the counter between them. "No pressure. Read it, burn it, throw it away. Your choice entirely." "But Jillian, I read it first. It's different from the others. He's not asking for anything." After George joined Garrett and the girls outside, Jillian stood alone with the envelope. She could ignore it. Should ignore it, probably. But curiosity won. The letter was short, handwritten on simple paper. No expensive stationery this time. No performance. Jillian, I'm writing this not because I expect you to read it, but because my therapist says sometimes closure is something you give yourself rather than receive from others. I destroyed our marriage. I abandoned you when you needed me. I blamed you for difficulties that were never your fault. I turned my cowardice into your failure because that was easier than accepting responsibility. Seeing you at my engagement party, seeing those beautiful girls, should have made me happy for you. Instead, it triggered every shame I'd been avoiding. I blamed you for my spiral instead of recognizing it as consequences of my own choices. I'm in recovery now, not just from alcohol, but from the toxic patterns my father taught me and I embraced. I'm learning that my worth isn't measured by perfection. That relationships require showing up, especially when it's hard. That love isn't about finding someone flawless, but choosing someone consistently. All lessons I should have learned before I married you. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that you were right about everything. The failure was mine. You were never broken. Your love was never insufficient. You were always enough. I was the one who wasn't. I'm genuinely happy you found Garrett and built the family you deserved. I'm grateful my father gets to be part of your girls' lives. And I'm learning to be okay with being just a closed chapter in your story rather than an ongoing presence. Thank you for setting boundaries, for refusing to save me from myself, for choosing your own healing over my guilt. Those were gifts, even though I fought them at the time. I hope your life continues to be everything mine wasn't, authentic, joyful, built on genuine love, with peace and finality. Warren. Jillian, read it twice, letting the words settle. It was a good letter, honest, accountable, the kind of letter that signaled actual growth. She felt satisfied, not triumphant, not vindicated, just satisfied that Warren was finally taking responsibility without trying to pull her into his process. What's that? Garrett appeared in the doorway, dirt on his jeans, Quinn on his shoulders. Closure, Jillian said simply. Warren sent closure. She handed him the letter. Garrett read it carefully, his expression unreadable. How do you feel? He asked finally. Ready to move on. Jillian looked out at Harper and Sloane, still enthusiastically destroying the garden. For real this time. Not running from him, or fighting him, or managing him. Just moving forward into our life. Do you want to respond? Jillian thought about it. Really thought about it. No, she said finally. This is enough. He's acknowledged everything. He's released me from his narrative. There's nothing left to say. She folded the letter and put it in a drawer. Not thrown away, but not displayed. Just filed as part of her history that she could acknowledge without dwelling on. Mommy, come see what we planted. Harper's voice carried through the open window. Jillian joined her family in the backyard, in the dirt and chaos and beautiful mess of their life. The following weekend brought the triplets' 4th birthday party. Their small backyard was filled with noise and laughter. Garrett's family, George, friends from work, children from the girls' preschool. Not fancy or expensive, just genuine and warm and theirs. Jillian stood at the grill, flipping hot dogs, watching Harper orchestrate relay races with the organizational skills of a military general. Sloane had set up a quiet corner for kids who needed sensory breaks, complete with noise-canceling headphones and stress balls. Quinn was showing George her collection of interesting rocks, each one cataloged with intense seriousness. You look happy, said Rachel, Jillian's co-worker and closest friend. I am, Jillian realized with surprise. I actually am. Good. You've earned it. Rachel sipped her wine. After everything with Warren. Warren is someone I used to know, Jillian interrupted gently. Past tense. Finished chapter. Rachel raised her glass. I'll drink to that. As evening fell and guests departed, George lingered to help clean up. He'd become part of their family in ways Warren never had. Present, helpful, asking nothing but to be included. Thank you, Jillian told him as he loaded paper plates into a trash bag. For being here. For being Grandpa George. For showing the girls what healthy family looks like. George paused, something emotional crossing his face. Thank you for letting me. For giving me a second chance I don't deserve. We all deserve second chances, Jillian said. When we're willing to do the work. After George left, Jillian found Garrett on their small back porch, watching fireflies in the gathering dark. Hell of a day, he observed as she settled beside him. The best kind of hell. Jillian leaned into his warmth. Chaotic and exhausting and perfect. The girls had fun. They did. She was quiet for a moment. Garrett, I realized something today. What's that? I haven't thought about Warren in weeks. Not in that obsessive, anxiety-driven way. He's just gone from my head. Like he doesn't take up space anymore. Garrett kissed her temple. That's healing, Jilly. Real healing. I wanted him to suffer, she admitted quietly. When I got that invitation, I wanted him to witness my happiness and be destroyed by regret. I wanted revenge. And now I just want this. She gestured at their modest yard, their sleeping daughters visible through the window, the life they'd built from honesty instead of performance. I don't need him to suffer. I don't need his regret. I just need my peace. You have it, Garrett said. You've always had it. You just had to stop letting him convince you otherwise. Later that night, after the girls were asleep and the house was finally quiet, Jillian stood before her bathroom mirror. She saw the exhaustion in her eyes, the lines that motherhood and struggle had etched into her skin. The body that Warren had called defective, that had created 3 perfect humans despite his doubts. She saw evidence of a life lived fully, messily, honestly. Warren had wanted her to be perfect, polished and performing, fitting into his narrative of success. She'd become something better, authentic. Mommy! Quinn's small voice startled her. The girl stood in the doorway, clutching her stuffed rabbit. Can't sleep. Come here, baby. Jillian scooped her up, breathing in that little girl's scent of shampoo and innocence. Mommy, why are you smiling? Quinn asked, settling against her chest. Because I'm happy. Because of the party? Because of everything. Jillian carried her daughter back to bed, tucking her in beside her sisters. Because I have you and Harper and Sloan. Because we have Garrett and Grandpa George. Because we have this life exactly as it is. Even when Harper is annoying, Jillian laughed. Even then. Okay. Quinn yawned, already drifting. Love you, Mommy. Love you more, baby. In the doorway, Garrett watched with that expression that still made her heart catch, like she was something precious he couldn't quite believe was his. You good? He asked as she joined him in the hallway. Yeah. Jillian took his hand. I really am. They returned to their bedroom, to their life, to the beautiful ordinary chaos they'd built together. If Jillian's journey inspired you, if you've ever had to choose peace over revenge, healing over validation, do me a favor. Hit that like button. Drop a comment telling me what part of this story resonated with you most. And subscribe to Mr. William Chronicles, because stories like this, stories about real transformation and choosing yourself, are what we do here. Warren was somewhere in Oregon, building a life that no longer included her. George was becoming the grandfather her daughters deserved. And Jillian was exactly where she needed to be. Free. Not perfect. Not performing. Just free. The invitation had arrived 6 months ago, wrapped in cruelty and expectation. Warren had wanted her to witness his triumph, to confirm his narrative that leaving her had been right. Instead, she'd learned something more valuable than revenge. That her worth had never been tied to his opinion. That her body had never been the problem. That the greatest victory wasn't making him regret losing her. It was genuinely no longer caring whether he did. She was Jillian Hayes, mother, partner, survivor, whole. Warren Caldwell was just someone she used to know. And that was exactly enough. Spring had arrived with softness, with new growth, with the promise of things planted carefully finally beginning to bloom. Jillian stood in her kitchen the next morning, watching Garrett make pancakes while the triplets argued about syrup distribution, and felt something she hadn't felt in years. complete. Not because someone had validated her. Not because revenge had been satisfying. Not because everything was perfect. But because she'd chosen herself. Her healing. Her peace. Her messy, imperfect, exhaustingly beautiful life. And in that choice, she'd found something Warren's wealth and status could never buy. Freedom. Remember, you're not defined by who gave up on you. You're defined by who you became after they left. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And I'll see you in the next one, right here on Mr. William Chronicles, where we tell stories that matter.